An elderly black man went to buy a phone and was suspected of shoplifting by an employee. The afternoon sky was clear and soft, and James Carter liked it that way. He stood at the bus stop with his wool cap pulled low and his coat buttoned against a light breeze. He was 72 and moved with the steady care of someone who had learned that patience is faster than hurry. In one glove he held a small notepad where he had written, in neat block letters, the things he needed in a phone for his wife, Ruth. Large text. Good battery. Easy voice to text. Simple camera. He had promised her he would take care of it before her eye treatment next week, and promises were not small things to him. They were bridges you built with time, and you walked across them together. When the bus came, he tapped his card, greeted the driver by name, and took a window seat. The city rolled by like a calm movie, corner bakeries, a barber waving a towel in the doorway, a street mural of children reading under a big painted tree. He smiled at that one. Reading had filled so many rooms in his life, first as a teacher and later as a school principal. Even now, retired, he helped at the library after-school program twice a week. Some days, when a student finally understood a sentence that had been slipping away from them, he felt something bright lift inside him. He thought of that feeling now and hoped a bigger font and voice commands would help Ruth find the same light when she sent messages to their granddaughter. The bus let him off a block from the phone store. He walked carefully, not because he felt weak, but because he liked to notice things. He noticed the flowers in a window box. He noticed a boy tying his shoe on the curb and waiting for an older sister to finish a phone call. He noticed the way the phone store caught the sun and threw it back in clean glass lines. Inside, he could already see bright displays and posters with short words, fast, clear, simple. He paused at the door to straighten his collar, because a person should meet a promise looking neat, and then he stepped inside. The store was busy. Music played softly above the hum of voices. A wall of phone cases made a rainbow to his left, and tables of demo phones stretched in neat rows down the middle. Each phone was tethered to a small white holder so customers could pick it up without walking off with it. A sensor at the entry gave a little chirp as someone left, and two teenagers laughed about a game they were downloading. James took in the scene, breathed once, and then walked toward the nearest display labeled Easy to Use. Good afternoon, he said to the first employee he saw. The young man wore a bright lanyard and a name tag that said Trevor. He was tall, with a clipped tone that carried over the music. I'm looking for a phone with large text and a strong battery. It's for my wife. Trevor looked at him, then at the notepad in his gloved hand, then back to his face. Uh-huh. The basic models are over there, he said, pointing with a short motion. We also have payment plans if you're concerned about price. I have the funds, James said gently. Thank you. He didn't bristle. He had learned long ago that you can let a lot of small things pass like clouds. Still, the shape of the words left a small chill in his chest. He made a note to hold fast to his purpose and keep the afternoon steady. He moved to the easy-to-use table and lifted a demo phone by its security tether. It had some weight to it, which he liked. Heavy things were often reliable, tools had taught him that. He tried the volume buttons, turned the screen on, and enlarged the text size. He smiled when the letters grew friendly. He imagined Ruth reading a recipe in the kitchen or sending a message that said, "Call me when you reach safely." He put the phone down and tested another. He compared the battery numbers on the placards. He wrote Model A, 2-day battery, on his notepad and underlined it. Behind him, footsteps moved and then matched his pace. He did not turn at once. He had no reason to. But he felt it, the presence of someone watching not because they were helping, but because they were counting. He set the phone down, adjusted his glasses, and took out his wallet to check a card with a discount program he had earned from the library's volunteer partners. He slid the wallet back into his inner coat pocket and kept comparing screens. Can I help you with anything else? Trevor had come closer now. His tone was even, but there was a tightness in it, like a door that hadn't been oiled. Yes, James said. Two things. First, does this model have voice-to-text that works well for slower speech? My wife speaks carefully when she is tired. Second, can we set up a larger home screen with fewer icons? Trevor gave brief answers. Yes, it has voice-to-text. And, yes, you can adjust the home screen. Then he added, if you're done comparing, I can take the phones back. He reached out even though James hadn't walked away with anything, the demo units were still attached to the table. I'm not taking them, James said, keeping his voice calm. Just looking. Over near the cases, a woman with a trainee badge Maya was showing a customer how to snap a case on without covering the camera. She glanced over at the middle tables when the entry sensor chirped again. It was a bright chirp, and it had done that twice in 5 minutes. She had been told the sensor sometimes acted up when the sun hit the glass just right or when stray anti-theft tags were left near the entry. It was on her mental list to check that later. She returned to her customer and smiled, but the chirp stuck in her ear. James tried a third phone. He turned the brightness up and down to feel how the slider moved. He liked smooth sliders. I'll take my time, he said to Trevor, and he gave a small friendly nod that was both thanks and a signal of respect. He refused to be hurried into a wrong choice. Trevor stepped away but not far. He leaned toward the security guard at the back, a steady man in a neat blazer whose name tag said Andre. Trevor spoke low, and Andre's eyes lifted to James for a moment, then returned to Trevor. Andre did not move. He had worked long enough to know the difference between a problem and a person. At the same time, he took concern seriously, because that was the job. From where he stood, James looked like any careful customer, patient, focused, and gentle with the demo phones. Still, Andre noted the time and the aisle in case he needed to recall it later. The entry sensor chirped a third time. This time it was not the door no one had just left. The sound came from the far side of the case's wall, faint but there. Maya looked up sharply. She had seen a loose anti-theft tag earlier during restocking, the small kind that sometimes held to the underside of a shelf by a thin sliver of adhesive. She told herself she would scan every underside before her break. She took a few steps toward the cases, then a customer asked her a question about colors, and she paused. James checked his list, then turned back to Trevor. Would you know if this model allows larger numbers on the dial pad? He asked. My wife prefers to see the whole number clearly. Sure, Trevor said, then added, can I see some ID if you're going to be handling devices for a while? Policy. The word landed stiffly. A couple nearby glanced over. James looked at his own hands, then at the demo phones, then back at Trevor. He kept his voice even. These units are attached, he said. I'm not taking them anywhere. I'm being as careful as I know how. Trevor nodded, but worry had already formed a shape behind his eyes, a shape that did not come from anything James had done, but from something else, assumptions, perhaps, or a mood that had arrived before the conversation began. He moved to the side and pulled out a small radio. His voice was quiet, but in a store with soft music, quiet carries. He said something about a watch, and that single word put a thin film over the moment, a film that the people nearby could feel without fully knowing why. James felt the air change. He had been in rooms where a feeling moved ahead of facts. As a principal, he had stepped into classrooms where a rumor had arrived first, and he had learned to slow time when that happened, to make room for truth to enter. He took a breath and kept his focus. He compared battery numbers. He eased the demo phone back onto its holder. He took out his notepad and made another line, ask about setup support. His handwriting stayed steady because he made it steady. Maya finished with her customer and walked toward the case's wall. She crouched, slid her fingers under the lip of a small display bin, and felt something thin and hard. She lifted it and saw a loose RF tag stuck to the underside. The light on it flickered faintly, then steadied. That would explain the stray chirps, she thought. She stood, looked across the store, and saw Trevor speaking again to Andre while glancing toward the middle tables. Her stomach tightened. She had seen this kind of chain before, a small sound, a fast assumption, and then a bigger sound. James lifted his notepad closer to his face. The letters were a little smaller than he liked. He reached into his inside coat pocket for his reading glasses, the thin metal kind that folded at the bridge. He unfolded them with a soft click. As he did, a faint beep sounded again, somewhere near the case's wall where Maya stood with the tag in her hand. It was soft, but it was enough for Trevor, who had already been listening for the next clue that fit the picture in his head. He looked at James's hand in his pocket, saw the glint of the glasses frame, and raised his radio. "Security to the middle aisle," he said, voice tight. Andre stepped forward at a calm pace, not hurrying, not dragging, hands open and visible. He had learned that hands can carry peace. "Afternoon, sir," he called gently from a few steps away. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" James turned, his glasses now in his hand. He looked at Andre, then at the small crowd that had formed without trying. A woman near the cases lowered her voice and asked if everything was okay. A teenager across the table stopped scrolling. The music kept playing the same soft song, but it felt thinner now, like it had lost part of itself. "I'm comparing models for my wife," James said, voice steady. "She needs larger text. I'm writing down features." "I understand," Andre said, and he truly sounded like he did. He kept his gaze level and respectful. "We just want to clear up a concern quickly." "What concern?" James asked. He did not raise his voice. He had spent a lifetime teaching that clear questions deserve clear answers. Trevor pointed at the inner pocket where James had just placed his glasses. "Hands visible, please," he said, a little louder now. "Let's just keep everything visible." James glanced at his own hand, still holding the small glasses, and then at Trevor. He felt a quiet sadness that arrived like a shadow. He did not want this moment to teach the wrong lesson to the people watching, especially the young ones. He held his glasses up so all could see. "These," he said softly, "are my reading glasses." From the case's wall, Maya lifted the loose tag and saw the tiny light blink again. She opened her mouth to speak. The entry sensor gave another faint chirp, echoing oddly through the glass and displays. Trevor's shoulders tightened. He lifted his radio higher and waved for Andre to come closer. James, still calm, shifted his weight, prepared to say the next careful sentence that could keep the room from tipping. To bring calm with him. James turned toward him, glasses in one hand and notepad in the other. The room had changed a little, voices were lower, the soft music sounded like it was playing from another room, and the air felt tight around small details. A teenager near the end of the table had tilted his phone upright. A mother with a stroller gently rocked it while watching from the corner of her eye. "Good afternoon," Andre said in a steady tone. "I'm Andre. I help keep everything smooth in the store. May I speak with you here for a moment?" "Of course," James said. "I'm looking for a phone with large text and strong battery. I'm comparing models for my wife." "Understood," Andre replied. He kept his voice even and respectful. "We want to clear up a concern that was reported. We can handle it quickly and keep this easy for everyone." James nodded once. "What is the specific concern?" he asked. He did not challenge the idea, he asked for the shape of it. Clear questions make room for clear answers. Trevor stood a step behind Andre, close enough to be part of the conversation, yet angled like a person ready to move. "Sir, for everyone's comfort," he said, "could we chat in the back?" It's just a quick check. I prefer to remain on the sales floor, James replied, calm but firm. I want everything to be clear and visible. I have nothing to hide. This is the list of features I'm checking. He lifted the notepad so they could see the neat block letters, large text, good battery, voice to text, simple camera. Below that, in smaller writing, was ask about setup help. Andre glanced at the notepad, then at the demo phones, tethered and resting on their docks. We can stay here, he said gently. No problem. Trevor's jaw tightened a little. Policy usually says policies are meant to help people, Andre said in the same measured voice. We can keep this respectful and still be careful. James offered another small piece of himself to bring the conversation down from a hard edge. My wife, Ruth, has an eye treatment next week, he said. She will need larger letters. I want a phone that will not frustrate her. That's why I'm here. He slid a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to Andre. It was a short note from the clinic, with a list of accessibility settings that would be helpful. The paper had a doctor's letterhead and a few handwritten check boxes. Andre read the note quickly, then handed it back. Thank you, he said. That helps. The door sensor chirped again, though no one had stepped through the doorway at that exact moment. The sound was faint but sharp, a little arrow of noise that made people glance up without meaning to. From the case's wall, Maya still held the loose RF tag she had found stuck to the underside of a display bin. She lifted it a couple of inches, and the tiny light flickered red, then faded. She lowered it and felt the adhesive etch. If she tilted the tag near the sensor field of the entryway, would it trigger the chirp? She took a few careful steps closer to test the theory. Sir, Trevor said to James, I'm going to ask that you keep your hands visible, okay? My hands are here, James said, raising both slightly, the glasses in one, the notepad in the other. Would you like me to remove my coat? I can do it right here if that shortens this. Andre weighed the options. You don't need to remove your coat at this time, he said. We have cameras. We have tethered devices. We can resolve this by checking facts. James nodded. Please do. Facts help everyone. A small circle of quiet formed around them. A man near the accessories rack cleared his throat and said, He's been at that table the whole time. His tone was cautious, not confrontational, but supportive of fairness. The mother with the stroller whispered, Let them handle it. The teenager lowered his phone a couple of inches, then raised it again, uncertain about what counted as helpful. Trevor touched his radio. I'm notifying the district line, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Just routine. He stepped aside, lowered his voice, and began a short, clipped call, choosing words that sounded technical, almost like code. He mentioned concern, observe, and moving to the back. After a moment, he added another call on a separate line. The phrase non-emergency carried in the quiet store. It was not loud, but the exact words floated, and several customers glanced up with the same thought, that this moment had grown larger than it needed to be. James felt an old skill return to him, the one he had used when lunchroom rumors heated a grade level, or when a misunderstanding in a hallway threatened to become a fight. The skill had two steps. First, slow time. Second, name something true. He breathed, then said in a voice meant for the room, not just for the two men in front of him, I would like to complete my purchase today. Before I do, please check your camera feed. Please also check any loose security tags near the entry. There may be a malfunction. Andre nodded. I can review the feed, he said. I'll ask someone to sweep the fixtures. Maya, hearing that last sentence, took it as permission to act. She lifted the tag higher. The small light blinked again as it passed close to the field of the entry sensor. The chirp answered like an echo. Maya took a quick breath of relief. This was a lead and walked faster toward Andre. On her way, a customer stopped her to ask, "Do you have this case in blue?" She glanced at Andre, then back at the customer. "I'll be right with you," she said, trying to balance urgency with courtesy. She moved again, tag still in hand. Trevor finished his calls and returned, the radio at his side like a small statement. "Per procedure, we've asked for external support," he said. "It's standard when there's an unresolved concern." "Thank you," James said politely, though the situation pressed on him. He kept his eyes kind and clear. "In the meantime, could you show me the dial pad with larger numbers on this model? It will be helpful when we resolve this." The request surprised Trevor. For a second, he seemed unprepared to shift back to normal service. Then he reached forward and tapped the settings, enlarged the dial pad, and stepped back. The four of them stood around the same little square of bright screen, all staring at numbers as if the display could absorb some of the tension. "Large and clear," James said. "That will help." He looked at Andre. "Would you like to check my pockets here, in the open?" "You may, if it shortens this and protects everyone's time." Andre shook his head. "I'd like to start with the cameras," he said. "We have good angles in this area. Also, if there is a sensor issue, we should correct that. If you are comfortable, you can continue to review models while I check." "I am comfortable," James said. He meant it. Comfort, for him, was not the absence of pressure, it was the presence of dignity. He would keep his posture, his voice, and his purpose. He would let the facts do their work. Andre walked to the counter where the monitor sat behind a neat glass partition. He nodded to a senior associate there and pointed at the camera views. Together, they rolled back the last several minutes. The screen showed James entering, greeting staff, lifting a demo phone, studying placards, writing notes. The tethers shone white against the table. Nothing left the table. The associate marked the timestamps. Back on the floor, Maya reached the group with the loose tag in her palm. "Andre," she called softly, "I found this stuck under the case bin. It's live. When I move it near the entry, it triggers the chirp." Trevor frowned. "That tag wouldn't set off the door from here," he said quickly. "I didn't say it set off the door," Maya replied, careful not to let heat slip into her voice. "I said it triggers the sensor field when moved. We need to sweep for stray tags and recalibrate. It could be causing random beeps that make people think something else is happening." James turned and gave Maya a grateful smile, a small nod that said thank you for looking closely. It was a teacher's smile, the kind that says you saw a detail, and details can save a day. Trevor looked toward the entry and then back to James's coat. "Even so," he said, "we need to confirm everything." "Of course," James said. "Please do." A quiet minute followed, the kind that feels longer than 60 seconds. A child in the stroller dropped a soft toy. The mother picked it up and tucked it back into small fingers. The teenager put his phone down, then lifted it again, unsure if the moment was over or still important. From the counter, Andre raised a hand toward the floor team, a signal that meant I have something. He did not shout. He did not rush. He walked back with the kind of steady pace that tells a room to lower its shoulders. "The video shows Mr. Carter handling only the demo units," he said to Trevor, using James's name now, a choice that restored personhood to the center of the moment. "Nothing left the table. We are also going to sweep for stray tags and check the sensor." "Good," James said, with the relief of a fact landing where it should. He lifted the phone with the large dial pad again, looked at the numbers, and imagined Ruth pressing them without squinting. The picture cleared in his mind, a simple daily kindness made easier. Trevor's radio crackled softly with a reply from his call. He glanced at it, then at the glass door. Outside, traffic moved in smooth lines. Sunlight slid down the window frames in bright bars. He swallowed and adjusted his lanyard. Maya crouched at the case's wall again, this time on purpose, checking undersides and edges. She found a second tag clinging half loose to a strip of plastic. She peeled it off, held it up, and felt a small rush of pride at catching another detail. She set both tags on the counter, far from the entry field, and made a quick note to ask for a bin audit during her break. "Sir," Trevor said to James, and this time his voice was less sharp, do you still want help with that model?" "Yes," James said kindly. "I would like to know if the voice-to-text can recognize slower speech clearly." Trevor opened the settings and turned on the microphone test. James spoke into the demo unit with a steady rhythm, "Hello, Ruth. I am bringing home a phone you can use with ease." The words scrolled onto the screen, neat and correct. A couple of customers smiled. It was such a gentle sentence. It felt like a window opening. Andre glanced toward the front again. The reflection on the glass shifted in a way he recognized from long experience. A marked vehicle rolled to a stop outside. Through the door's glare, silhouettes approached calm, professional, not hurried. This was the non-emergency response Trevor had called in. Andre took a breath, ready to meet them with the facts in hand and the right words lined up. Inside the store, the music changed to a new track, something light with a soft drum. Maya rose with the two stray tags in her hand. The teenager lowered his phone again, as if reading the room's new rhythm. James finished his test sentence and glanced at the doorway, where shadows moved across the glass like quiet shapes on water. The door opened with a soft chime. Two officers stepped inside, faces neutral, hands free at their sides. The brief cool of outside air followed them in and then faded. They paused just inside the entry, taking in the scene: a customer with a notepad, a security guard with a steady posture, an associate holding two loose tags, a staff member with a radio, and a circle of curious faces. For a heartbeat, the entire store held its breath, balanced between the next question and the next. The officers stepped into the store with measured steps, their faces calm and professional. They were not rushing, not stern, but steady, as if they had walked into many tense moments and knew the best way was to let calm lead. Andre met them halfway, his hands open, his voice clear. He explained in a low but steady tone, "We have a customer here who was suspected of shoplifting. Cameras show he only handled demo units. A trainee also found stray security tags that may have triggered false beeps. We are resolving it." The taller officer nodded. "So no theft?" "No theft," Andre confirmed. "It appears to be a misunderstanding." James stood quietly by the demo phones, his glasses in one hand, his notepad in the other. He did not shift his weight nervously, nor did he raise his voice. He simply looked at the officers, then at Andre, then back to the screen of the phone where the enlarged numbers still glowed. He had learned long ago that dignity could outlast suspicion. Trevor, however, looked unsettled. He leaned forward, as though hoping the officers would take charge and move James aside. "He was moving strangely," Trevor said. "I thought he slipped something in his coat." He looked nervous. The shorter officer turned toward James. "Sir, can we ask you a couple of quick questions?" "Of course," James said. "I have nothing to hide." "What are you here to purchase?" the officer asked. "A smartphone for my wife," James replied, holding up his notepad. "She has vision challenges. She needs large text, a strong battery, and voice to text. I wrote down the features her doctor recommended. I have been comparing models." He extended the notepad. The officer read the neat block letters and gave a small nod. "Do you have anything in your coat pockets besides personal belongings?" "My reading glasses, my wallet, and this note," James answered. He held them out one by one. "Would you like to check them here, in public, so there is no doubt?" The taller officer shook his head. No, sir, that won't be necessary. The guard has already checked the footage. Andre stepped in again. The footage is clear. He handled demo phones only. Maya found loose security tags causing false alarms. He gestured toward Maya, who held the tags in her palm. The shorter officer leaned to look. Yes, those can cause issues. We've seen that before. The taller officer addressed James directly. Sir, we apologize for the inconvenience. There's no indication of theft here. You are free to continue your shopping. The words were simple, but they mattered. A weight shifted in the room. Some customers let out small sighs. The mother with the stroller smiled faintly, relieved. The teenager who had been recording lowered his phone, whispering, "Guess it was nothing." But James felt more than just relief. He felt the echo of what it had been like, standing at the center of suspicion. The looks, the whispers, the unspoken doubts. He knew this moment was not only about him. It was about every quiet person who had been mistaken for a problem before being seen as a person. He turned to the officers. "Thank you," he said. "And thank you for arriving calmly." They nodded again, then stepped aside, ready to leave. But Trevor could not let it go. His voice was quieter now, but stubborn. "With respect," he muttered, something still felt off. "People don't usually write notes like that unless they're covering for something." Andre gave him a sharp look. "Trevor. Enough." But James answered with patience. "Young man," he said kindly, "writing notes is not a cover. It is preparation. I spent my life teaching. When we prepare, we respect the time of others. That is all. This is a list to honor my wife's time and needs." A hush fell. Customers who had doubted earlier now saw something else, a man explaining not to defend himself, but to teach gently, as if the room itself were a classroom. Miss Patel, the district manager, arrived just then. She had hurried back from her lunch break after a message from the store. She stepped inside, quickly took in the scene: officers, a guard, a customer holding a notepad, an employee with tense shoulders, and a trainee clutching stray tags. Her eyes were sharp but calm. "Status?" she asked Andre. "Footage shows no theft," Andre replied. "Loose security tags were causing false alarms. This customer has been wrongly suspected." Miss Patel's gaze shifted to James. Her expression softened. "Mr. Carter," she said, surprised. James blinked. "Yes. Do we know each other?" She smiled faintly. "I've seen you at the community library. You read with the children every Wednesday afternoon. My niece was in your group last year." Recognition rippled through the room. The man who had been suspected of stealing was the same man who helped children discover books and stories. Trevor looked down, the realization pressing on him. The shape of his assumptions shifted in his mind. Miss Patel's voice was steady but firm. "Mr. Carter, I am deeply sorry for what happened here today. You should have been treated with respect from the moment you walked in. You have our gratitude, not suspicion." She turned to Trevor. "And you will reflect carefully on this. Nervousness is not guilt. Assumption is not evidence." James raised his hand gently. "Please," he said. "I do not want anger. I want learning. That is what makes the mistake worth something." The officers nodded, satisfied. They stepped out quietly, leaving the store to handle its own repair. But the story was not finished. Outside, on the sidewalk, the teenager who had been recording tapped upload. A short video showing the confrontation, the false alarms, and the arrival of the police was already moving through group chats and neighborhood feeds. Notifications buzzed across the sales floor as phones picked it up. Inside, Maya placed the loose tags on the counter with quiet determination. "These need to be checked across the whole store," she said. "If we don't fix this, It will happen again. Miss Patel agreed at once. We'll do a sweep today. And more than that, we'll review how we treat customers when alarms sound. Machines make errors. People don't need to add to them. James stood still for a moment, then looked down at the phone he had been testing. The enlarged dial pad glowed up at him, steady and clear. He touched the numbers softly, as though already imagining Ruth's hands pressing them. The store was quiet, but the tension had shifted. What had begun as suspicion was now something else, a chance to repair, to acknowledge, to change. And just as James thought the moment was closing, the door chimed again. Another voice carried in, one from the sidewalk, "That's him, the man in the video." A customer walked in holding up his own phone, showing James's face on a screen already filling with comments. The room held its breath again. The misunderstanding was no longer private. It was now a story the whole neighborhood was starting to see. Would you like me to continue part 3 until the full 1,300 words with more depth, adding realistic dialogue, inner thoughts, crowd reactions, and stronger build-up toward the public fallout, or should I keep it at this balance and move straight into expanding part 4? The room had shifted into a strange kind of quiet after the officers left. Customers still milled about, but no one was really shopping. The video on the teenager's phone had already spread, and a few others inside the store had their heads bent toward glowing screens, whispering about the incident they had just witnessed. The misunderstanding was no longer a private matter, it had spilled into the public. Everyone's eyes seemed to follow James as if waiting for his next move. James, however, did not let the weight of the stairs bend his back. He stood tall, holding his notepad, and returned to the demo phone as though he truly was only here to do one thing, find the right device for his wife. He tapped the enlarged numbers on the dial pad again and said softly, "Yes, this is clear enough." His calmness did not erase the tension, but it changed its direction. He had shown everyone that dignity could live in the center of a storm. Miss Patel, the district manager, knew that the moment required more than silence. She walked to the middle of the store and said in a steady but respectful voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a moment to clarify what just happened. This customer, Mr. James Carter, was wrongly suspected. Our security footage confirms he did nothing wrong. A loose security tag created false alarms. We sincerely apologize to him, and to all of you who witnessed this." Her words traveled across the floor, and people nodded. Some murmured agreement. The mother with the stroller gave a small smile toward James, and the teenager who had been recording lowered his phone for good. The tension began to lift like mist after sunrise. But James did not want the apology to vanish into the air without meaning. He spoke up, his voice calm but carrying. "Thank you for saying that. But I would like the apology to be as public as the suspicion was. It was not only me who felt it. Everyone here saw it, and some even recorded it. If we leave it unclear, the wrong story will travel farther than the right one." His words struck the staff. Andre nodded. Maya pressed her lips together in agreement. Even Miss Patel knew he was right. "Then let us make it clear," she said. She faced the customers again. "Mr. Carter is a valued member of this community. He has given his time for years to help children learn to read. He deserved better treatment here. We accept responsibility, and we will correct our systems and our training." There was a small round of claps from one corner. Not loud, not forced, just enough to show support. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. His earlier certainty was dissolving in front of so many eyes. He looked at James, then at Miss Patel, then down at the floor. He had made a mistake, and now he had to live in its shadow. James looked at him gently. "Young man," he said, "mistakes are part of being human. What matters is whether we use them to grow. If you learn from this, then today will not be wasted." That kindness, spoken so simply, landed deeper than any scolding. Trevor's face softened, and though he did not speak yet, something in him bent toward humility. Miss Patel turned to her staff. Effective immediately, we will sweep the store for stray tags and recalibrate our sensors. More importantly, we will revisit how we treat customers when alarms sound. A beep is not guilt. An assumption is not evidence. We will begin additional training on bias awareness and de-escalation. Maya raised her hand slightly. If I may, she said. We should also create a log for sensor glitches. That way, when alarms chirp without cause, we can track patterns instead of blaming customers. That is an excellent idea, Miss Patel said. She made a quick note on her tablet. We will implement that starting today. James listened quietly. He felt a small warmth that his dignity had not only been defended but had created a chance for real change. Still, he wanted the moment to finish with peace. I will accept your apology, he said. If you accept one promise from me, I will return here not with suspicion in my memory, but with hope that things will be better. Please make sure that is true. We will, Miss Patel said firmly. She then turned back to James. As a gesture, we would like to offer you the phone you need at no cost. James shook his head softly. I appreciate the thought. But I do not want charity. I only want respect. Let me purchase it. That will make it feel right. Miss Patel nodded, respecting his choice. Then we will give you a discount, and free setup support. No strings. Only our way of saying thank you for your patience. That is acceptable, James said with a small smile. Andre walked back to his station, his posture calm again. Maya returned to assisting customers, but she carried herself taller, knowing she had helped stop an error from growing worse. Trevor, still quiet, stayed near, watching James with a different kind of attention, one not shaped by suspicion, but by the need to learn. The customers slowly drifted back into shopping. The mother with the stroller picked up a case. The teenager pocketed his phone and whispered to a friend, he handled that like a pro. The store felt lighter again, though a lesson hung in the air like a note that had not yet faded. James finally sat with a sales associate to complete the purchase. He chose the model with the large numbers and voice to text. As the associate prepared the box, James looked around the store. The same walls, the same music, the same light, but something had shifted. A wrong had been named, and a better way promised. That, to him, was worth more than silence. Outside, the video of the incident was still spreading. But soon, another video would spread too, the one showing the apology, the explanation, and the way the store had corrected its mistake. The story would not only be about suspicion, it would also be about repair. And in the quiet of his heart, James thought of Ruth. He pictured her holding the new phone, reading messages easily, smiling at the larger text, and perhaps never knowing the weight of the misunderstanding that had hovered over this afternoon. That was how he wanted it. Let her see the gift, not the storm. The day was not yet over, but for James, the hardest part had passed. What remained now was to turn this public wound into a public lesson. And that, he knew, would matter far beyond one phone store. The following week unfolded in a way that no one in the store had expected. The video that had first shown James being suspected of shoplifting had stirred emotions across the neighborhood. But alongside that, another clip began spreading, the one where Miss Patel stood in front of customers, apologized publicly, and clarified the truth. People saw how James had handled the situation with calm dignity, and how the store had admitted its mistake. The story began to shift from one of suspicion to one of accountability. James himself did not seek the attention. He carried the new phone home in a simple bag, walked up the front steps of his modest house, and handed it to Ruth with a smile. Here, he said softly, a tool that will make things easier. She opened the box slowly, ran her fingers over the larger screen, and pressed the enlarged numbers on the dial pad. Her face lit up. I can see it, she whispered. I can really see it without straining. For James, that moment was worth more than all the noise of the misunderstanding. At the store, change began immediately. The loose tags were collected, every fixture was inspected, and the sensor system was recalibrated. A new log was posted at the staff counter. Whenever a random chirp or beep happened, it had to be written down, not just ignored or blamed on customers. This simple act began to open the staff's eyes. Technology was not perfect, and human judgment had to be better than guesswork. Training sessions started too. Each employee, from the most senior to the newest trainee, attended a workshop on bias awareness. They watched videos of past incidents in other stores, they role-played respectful customer interactions, and they discussed how assumptions could create harm even when no theft occurred. For many, it was the first time they had thought deeply about the power of suspicion. Trevor, especially, sat through the sessions with quiet intensity. He replayed his actions over and over in his mind. Each time he remembered James's calm face and kind words, he felt a twist in his chest. One Saturday morning, Miss Patel invited James back to the store. He hesitated at first, returning to the same doorway where he had been accused felt heavy, but he agreed when she explained the purpose. "We want to make things right," she told him. "Not just with words, but with action. Would you be willing to speak to the staff about what respect means to you as a customer?" And so, on that Saturday, James walked back through the glass doors. This time, the sensor gave a normal chirp, and employees greeted him with genuine warmth. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," Andre said, smiling as he extended his hand. "We're glad you came." Chairs had been arranged in a circle near the accessories wall. Staff members sat with notepads, ready to listen. Miss Patel introduced James briefly, but most already knew who he was: the retired principal, the man from the video, the person who had turned a mistake into a chance for growth. James began softly. "I am not here to shame anyone. I am here to share something I've learned in my life. When I was a principal, I saw children make mistakes every day. But I learned to look past the mistake and see the person. A child is more than a broken rule. And a customer is more than a suspicion. If you treat people as problems, they will close up. If you treat them as people, they will open up, and then you can see the truth clearly." He paused, looking around the circle. Every face was turned toward him, even Trevor's. "That day in this store, I was treated as a problem," he continued. "It hurt, not because of what was said, but because of what was implied, that I could not be trusted simply for standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. But here's the thing, you have the power to make sure no one else feels that way again. You can decide, every time, to greet before you guard. To serve before you suspect. To ask before you assume." The room was quiet except for the scratch of pens on paper. Even the music had been turned off. Trevor raised his hand slightly. His voice was low but clear. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I was the one who suspected you. I let my assumption guide me. I thought I was protecting the store, but I realize now I was not protecting dignity. I am sorry. Truly." James nodded gently. "I accept your apology. And I hope you accept my reminder. Use this as your lesson. If you do, you will become not just a better employee, but a better man." Trevor's eyes shone with quiet resolve. "I will," he said. From that day forward, the store culture changed. Employees began greeting each customer with a smile, not just as routine, but as practice. The "we greet before we guard" reminder, which Miss Patel had posted at the employee entrance, became more than a slogan, it became a habit. The sensor log filled with notes of small chirps, and each was treated as data, not as evidence against people. The neighborhood noticed too. Customers who had seen the video returned to shop, curious to see if things felt different. And they did. The atmosphere was lighter, warmer, more human. People began to tell others, that store had a problem, but they fixed it. Meanwhile, Ruth enjoyed her new phone at home. She sent her first clear message to her granddaughter, "Hello, darling. I can read this without straining." The reply came back almost instantly, a stream of heart emojis and "Love you, Grandma." For James, that small exchange was proof that patience and dignity could carry him through even the hardest moments. Weeks later, James returned once more to the store. This time, he was not there for a purchase, but to check in. He walked through the doorway, the sensor gave its ordinary chirp, and the staff greeted him warmly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter," said Maya with a smile. "How is your wife enjoying her phone?" "She is enjoying it very much," James replied. Miss Patel came over and asked, "Would you like to see the changes we put in place?" James walked with her around the store. He saw the new signage reminding staff of service values, the neat sensor log with dates and times of random chirps, and even a staff huddle board with the phrase "Respect First" written in bold letters. He nodded slowly. "This is good," he said. "This is how a mistake becomes a seed, if you let it grow into something better." As he prepared to leave, Andre walked him to the door. "Mr. Carter," he said, "thank you. Not just for your patience that day, but for giving us the chance to learn. Many people would have walked away angry. You stayed and helped us change." James smiled, adjusting his cap. "I stayed because change is worth staying for. And because my wife needed her phone." He stepped out into the sunlight, the city alive with its weekend rhythm. Behind him, the store was no longer just a place of suspicion, it had become a place of growth. And so the story that had begun with false alarms and a heavy misunderstanding ended with something brighter, a lesson for a store, a gift for a community, and a quiet reminder that dignity, once defended, can open doors no suspicion can close.